And now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Constance.
A very good morning to you, Charles. I hope you're good today.
I've always been good.
Okay.
What makes it different from yesterday?
I don't know. Maybe you feel more wonderful today and yesterday you were a bit down. I don't know. Just asking. And Yolanda, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you again today.
Wonderful to see you. Good to see everyone. Okay, to look at the papers with us today, we have Iyo Akerea. He is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. In this day, PDP in disarray. In a major political earthquake, Okowa, a vice presidential candidate, Oborawori, governor of Nigeria's oil-rich Delta State, along with all local government chairmen and the party's political apparatchik defect to the ruling party. What a day, Igor. It's an extraordinary turn of events, and some would say that it's actually earth-shattering. We knew that PDP governors were going to support the president. We talked about it yesterday. But now we're here. Can you give us an insight into the news behind the news? What is actually going on?
Well, these are interesting times for the political ecosystem
Indeed.
in Nigeria, apparently. Many people saw it coming. You agree with me that the social media, even the mainstream media, has been a bit awash with the information that some governors are likely going to move from the PDP to the APC. So for those that are very surprised, it means that they probably took those snippets of information coming out, for granted. Now, with regards to what happened yesterday, for me, I saw it coming. I'm from Delta State. I saw it coming very clearly. Particularly when Nasir El-Rufai moved to the SDP and was making some statements, and that was followed by the presidential candidate of the PDP, the 2023 elections, when he visited Buhari and started consulting
Alhaji Atiku
Abubakar. Oh yes, when he started consulting with some northern political gladiators, leaving out, his own allies in the south. So I then began to have a feeling that maybe, the north is also thinking of 2027, and clearly Atiku wants to run for president in 2027, and he did not even, consult his own running mate in 2023 election. That is Ifeanyi Okowa. That alone, is a letdown, it's a disappointment, I feel so, for Okowa, who went out of his way to even support Atiku and agreed to run with him for the presidency 2023 when majority of certain political gladiators, including the governors, felt that it was time for power shift to the south. And, after the elections, President Tinubu emerged, and you saw a lot of the governors from the south pledging their support to the president, even when they are in different political parties. Alex Oti in Abia State, he's of the Labour Party, is supporting the president. You see Professor Charles Soludo of ABGA in Anambra State also supporting the president. And you see the PDP governor supporting the president. So what all of this point out to is clearly, a dichotomy. It is widening the gap between the North and South politically, when the North feels that they hold the levers of power, they can determine who becomes the president of Nigeria at any point. And don't forget also that some northern political gladiators have threatened the president that they are going to serve him the Jonathan treatment. So when you make those kind of statements and make people think and believe that, the country can't have peace unless, the North possibly holds power, that becomes some kind of challenge. So many people will agree with what has happened. Okowa see this personally as a challenge. The governor of Delta State, don't forget, is the richest state in Nigeria. It earns about 80 to 100 billion every month in oil receipts. So for the APC to have Delta State, I think it did, as with the caption of this day today, PDP clearly is in disarray. I do not know how the PDP is going to recover from this.
All right.
That is the undercurrent, basically.
This is all signaling into a major political shift. Let's see Daily Sun, because that same story appears there. It says PDP bleeds as a Delta governor rep join APC. I think perhaps it's about time the country begins to talk about anti-defection laws in order not to compromise the mandate given by voters to people. If a governor, an entire governor of a state, decides to decamp from the party or the platform upon which he was elected, there should be legal implications, there should be constitutional implications. Charles, don't you think? I mean, people are already talking about this because some, many Nigerians would prefer to live in a multi-party system.
I believe there's a law in place like that. I mean, I have a vague understanding of it. However, in spite of its existence, there are also so many legal loopholes that can be exploited. So it actually renders that law powerless. Secondly, we should also remember that Nigeria has most of the time been a one-party state. What we have is multi-party politicians. I mean, it's very easy for a politician to cross the divide from one political party to the other. With a snap of a finger, it doesn't take anything. Just gather people together, make the declaration, and then you are good to go. So that's the irony. And then secondly, the People's Democratic Party used to be the party of the South. It was like APC had more presence in the North. But we have seen an evolution taking place right under our very noses. It is now the APC, dominating the South now, and then the northern politicians are thinking about, splitting ties with the All Progressives Congress. So yes, we live in very interesting political times.
All right, a lot going to happen with that. Let's look at the Daily Independent. Chaos as Air Peace suspends flight amid NIMET staff strike. We still have that story in Daily Sun as well. Daily Sun, it reports that it affects all other airlines. So the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, and other unions in the aviation industry embarked on strike over poor conditions of service. Airpeace says without adequate and regular weather report, flight safety cannot be guaranteed. Well, a plausible statement from Airpeace. This has disrupted many lives and plans of people, as you can imagine. Any quick comments here before we move on to The Guardian?
Yes, I'd like to jump in and just first of all mention what the online atmosphere has been with this story coming out. A video was circulating about with Airpeace, issuing like he was on a phone call when he was speaking and saying that everything should be shut down and that flights should be stopped because he does not want any trouble for his, aviation company concerning what is happening with the changes in weather at the moment. And I dropped down to the comments section, and so many people were complaining about how their lives are being disrupted, just as you had mentioned. And, it's a delicate balance because surely a lot of lives are being disrupted by all these changes that are literally being done in a blink of an eye. But at the same time, there's a lot of truth to it. Aviation disasters are not something to be taken lightly. Precautions have to be taken. This year alone, from the beginning of the year, we've been having many disasters, thankfully not in Nigeria, but it's enough to make you sit down and think that, we need to be more careful, especially with this ongoing strike. But then it also poses the question, is there another agenda to this? Is there more to the story than what meets the eye?
Well, allowing the staff of NIMET to go on strike in the first place, I think that shouldn't even have been allowed to happen.
Allow? It's a union.
Yes, of course. So what are their...
You can't stop them.
What were their grievances? Why not address those grievances, or at least go into negotiations? Well, I don't think anybody saw this coming, but Airpeace behaved like a responsible airlines. If you do not have the weather experts working, then you're actually putting the lives of your customers and passengers in peril. For someone like me who's terribly scared of flying, when I heard that this was the reason why Airpeace was suspending their flights, I said, I think that's a good one. I mean, what if they had allowed their flights to continue?
Agreed.
Would they be able to live down the backlash of a major aviation disaster simply because, you know, the weather patterns were not being properly predicted?
All right. Let's see the Guardian newspaper. Reps say 1,723 vessels engage in sharp practices on Nigerian waters. These vessels are suspected of engaging in illegal fishing, oil theft, and waste dumping, posing economic and environmental risk. Nigeria's waters account for nearly 47% of all vessel traffic in the Gulf of Guinea, according to this report. Well, this explains why we have so many illegal bunkering incidents in Nigeria. Porous borders, porous waters, weak state.
It's interesting. This is a clear indictment for me of the Nigerian Navy, because the Navy has a clear responsibility, you know, to police our coastal lines, the waterways, and ensure that the economic sustainers of the resources of the seas. You know, don't forget we have a minister for blue economy, which means that there is a lot of resources that most countries actually can generate from their coastal environment and waters.
The government is trying to develop that industry.
It's a clear indictment. It means that the Navy will have to sit up if the oversight function of the House of Reps has in there over 1,000 vessels. That is massive. And the Navy has aircraft, they have drones, they have patrol craft. So what is the Navy really doing? They are great officers and men of the Nigerian Navy, but I think they are not doing enough. With this revelation, it also means that beyond even our land borders that are leaking, the waterways are leaking, oil resources have been stolen, gas and oil resources have been stolen. Fishes, you can imagine, fish is very expensive in Nigeria. Today, we import most of the fish that we consume. Meanwhile, we have enough coastal lines that, you know, we have vessels that can actually get these fishes and make it also available to Nigerians.
Well, you know, these vessels,
you can see them. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, these vessels can be seen. It's not something that is invisible or hidden. So if you actually wanted to do something, you will do that. Let's move on to the Vanguard newspaper. Anti-party activities. Atiku Wike should leave PDP immediately, according to Bode George. He says they are hobnobbing with the enemy party. Bode George said, and I quote, "The other day, President Bola Tinubu told Wike that APC must win the council election in FCT, and he agreed. President Muhammad Buhari remains my boss, but he's not a member of our party. So why is Atiku hobnobbing with him politically? Is he not guilty of anti-party activities?" Valid points raised by Chief Bode George. He is an old member of the PDP. It's apparent that most of these individuals, or some of them, are above the party. There's no party supremacy, and it will be difficult for anyone to argue that, you know, the PDP is not almost dead. It's really a tragedy what's going on. Charles, if you want to jump in.
I earlier said there are no permanent friends or enemies in politics. It's only the interests that are permanent. And secondly, you know, we have multi-party politicians. The activities of Atiku Abubakar and Nyesom Wike, these are not surprising. Abubakar, for instance, after serving as Nigeria's vice president, has also run as, I think, either a presidential candidate or even a presidential aspirant on the platform of the APC, which he helped to found, and then went back to the People's Democratic Party. So for him, it's been that kind of a dance. In Wike's own case, it's actually strange that, you know, after he and Atiku Abubakar fell out over who should have run as the presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2023 elections, he is serving under an all-progressives Congress government. But mark you, he has not renounced his membership of the People's Democratic Party. So it appears as if the two men are actually responsible for the crisis within the People's Democratic Party at the moment. And that has not been lost on Bode George. I think that's probably one of the few very one-party politicians in Nigeria that I know about. Right. So, I mean, he's actually calling a spade a spade.
I need to quickly add this. Atiku for me, this is my personal opinion, Atiku has been a problem of any party finds himself, whether it's the APC or PDP. Once he can't realize his presidential ambitions, he moves on. So I see Wike as the only courageous person who is able to actually take on Atiku, and that is why people think that Wike is making some trouble. For me, I commend the FCT minister for having the courage. From 2007, Atiku has always wanted to be president. He's a serial runner for the presidency. And he has also emerged as a serial loser. And then again, he's also preparing to run again in 2027. I think that is really the problem. I sympathize with Chief Olabode George this morning. He's been a very consistent voice in the People's Democratic Party. He's a member of the PDP Board of Trustees. He's been very, very consistent. What is happening, he sees it as a deliberate hemorrhage orchestrated particularly by Elijah Atiku Abubakar. He's only just adding Wike. But for me, I think Wike just felt he has had enough and he needs to challenge Atiku to all of his political shenanigans.
But you know, it's a case of when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Wike and Atiku's conflict has actually decimated the People's Democratic Party, unfortunately.
And if we remember, former President Olusegun Obasanjo had told Vice President then Alhaji Atiku Abubakar that, I think he said something in the lines of that he would never be president, if I'm correct. So what it was that Atiku ran against him after their first term together, and Obasanjo was so miffed that he could do that to him, someone that he picked from Adamawa State, who was going to be governor, to be on the same ticket with him. So since that time, Atiku has not realized that ambition. I don't know whether that is following him up till today. Let's go to the Punch newspaper quickly. Killings. Tinubu demands fresh security blueprint from intelligence chiefs. When you read through this entire report, there's nothing new. Everything said here has been said before. It was a 4-hour meeting with the National Security Advisor and other security chiefs with the president who just returned. He has given them marching orders, given directives. Now what? I don't know. Does anyone want to comment here? Now what on security? We just have to wait and see.
Absolutely, that's just it. I mean, the president has spoken, so let's see if the security services will carry out his commands. Or maybe, just maybe, when we hear about the next attack, then we will find out exactly what the response has been. Okay. Who will defy the president?
Let's see leadership as well. Here we have leadership newspaper. Members hold parallel sittings as crisis rocks Zamfara Assembly. 29 states default in contributory pensions. And still on party politics, PDP suffers big blow as APC captures Delta. On to the international headlines, daily graphic. At IMF World Bank spring meetings, Africa calls for debt restructuring. They say some debt levels are preventing the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have a picture there, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Asiama. Yolanda, if you want to come in here, where do we begin with this, story and the development discourse? It's like beating a dead horse. If Africans fail to take charge, this sort of headlines will remain in the coming decades.
Absolutely. It is like beating a dead horse, and we seem to be going around in circles. We're in 2025 and we are still talking about debt restructuring for Africa. And yet Africa is so wealthy in resources. The world is, trying to have its fair share of almost every country on this continent. And yet here we are looking like beggars, still asking to be considered, still asking for our economies to, for the West especially to be looking into our debt, and it's exhausting, to be sincere. And also in line with the SDG goals, these are such primary goals, the things that we are seeking for and asking for as Africans and trying to achieve, should not be the goals of 2025. We're in a new age. We should have moved past all of these things.
Yeah,
I like how in the past, you know, Ghana brought about, we were speaking about the mining, you know, the resources of how mining is being done and how resources are being plundered. We need more of that. We need to look within and create our own solutions to our problems, because we're always going to be looking for handouts from the West, and it's not sustainable for the future.
You know, the world's financial institutions will be very skeptical about, you know, debt forgiveness or debt relief for African nations when they use Nigeria as a case study. Remember, under the Obasanjo administration, Nigeria's debt was wiped clean, down to the last dollar. We had to start all over again, and we wasted the opportunity.
That's very
and
true.
you know, for a country like Nigeria, if that happens, then what would the financial institutions be thinking if they decided to go that route again, you know, of debt forgiveness for any African nation? I don't think that's going to happen. We'll have to find a way out of this situation by using our own ingenuity, but definitely no quarter from the global financial institutions.
As Yolanda said, you know, mentioned earlier, Africa is failing to learn its lessons. It's the richest continent in the world. It's like a rich man going to a poor man, to somebody who is poorer, to actually beg for assistance. So the inability of the African continent to extricate itself from imperialist colonialism and always going back to the colonial masters and those who granted them independence to ask for favor. I mean, that is appalling. I think it's high time Africa actually wakes up.
All right. Citizen newspaper, Zimbabwe heads for a meltdown amid decay. Opposition and ruling party are in disarray. The socioeconomic crisis deepens as well. We know that since the 2000s, Zimbabwe has been under sanctions imposed by the United States and the European Union. This has crippled its economy. And to add to that, the ruling party, ZANU-PF, wants to extend the president's tenure by 2 years until 2030. Double jeopardy right there. It's hard to see how Zimbabwe climbs out of this. I don't know if you have any insight here, Iyo, or any comment on this.
Okay, Yolanda.
Oh, Yolanda, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very passionate about this because
yes, it's your country. I forgot.
I'm very passionate about the plight of Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe once upon a time was considered the breadbasket of Africa. We have so many resources in Zimbabwe, from gold, diamonds, platinum. The list is exhaustive. And just last week, Zimbabwe celebrated 45 years of independence. Yes, we are still very much a baby in consideration of other countries, but I think that what this headline was trying to highlight is not just the breakdown of the country, but the fact that our neighboring countries are not standing up to help us. In the Citizen newspaper, when I read the full report... You have
to round up. We're almost out of time.
All right, that's fine. When I read the full report, it was actually speaking more of how to keep Zimbabweans out of South Africa than to actually find solutions or to tackle the problem at hand.
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk about that more another day. But before we quickly go, the Independent: Trump take peace deal now or risk losing everything. He's talking to Zelensky. And then we have The Guardian also: noisy phone users could face ban on transport service in the UK. You might get a fine of £1,000 or banned outrightly from using the bus service because you're either blasting your favorite tune on the bus or watching your favorite movie, you know, loudly. And I think a lot of people would agree with that kind of a punishment.
Every phone comes with a headset, so excuse me, and we have no excuse at all.
Yeah,
that's why I'm interested in what is happening in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. Really, for 3 years, Ukraine and Russia, part of Russia, has become a clearly massive killing field. And for me, this morning I agree with Putin. Can Ukraine really win the war against Russia? I doubt if
we have to go. Okay, thank you so much, Iyo Akerera, a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, for joining us today.
And thank you so much, Dr. Constance, for leading today's newspaper review. That's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. Goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.